They look great.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The idea of this talk is I'm just going to go through and give you my impressions of the decadal review. It just came out yesterday, so no one's had a chance to read it fully. And then we'll have some opportunity for questions later. And I'm anxious to hear what other people also think about this, this interesting document. So the document starts off and it divides into three main areas that it wants to explore over the coming years: worlds and suns in context. This includes stars, the worlds orbiting them, and has all the exoplanet interesting avenues of investigation one might imagine. New messengers and new physics. This seems to be a very broad observational program that spans not just electromagnetic spectrum, but also gravitational waves and particle probes of the time variable and violent universe and cosmic ecosystems, which is the study broadly of the evolution of the cosmos that includes things like black hole feedback, galaxy growth across cosmic time. And the key thing here is that the EHT can make fundamental contributions clearly to new messengers and new physics for compact objects, but also for cosmic ecosystems. If we can look at a number of black holes and look at potentially, for example, spin across cosmic time. Our image from the EHT was used to great effect throughout the entire document, whether or not it was actually called out as being the EHT or not. You can see here it forms the central image for the new messengers and new physics diagram that is shown early on in the report. Now, the EHT results are mentioned actually a number of places throughout the entire document. My first reading was that it wasn't, but I think that there are a number of places where the EHT result is squarely and responsibly called out. So this is the very, very beginning of the document. And it talks about the direct image of a black hole in a nearby galaxy, I believe that's us, as being one of the extraordinary discoveries in astronomy and astrophysics in the past decade. So they're definitely calling out the EHT work here as a direct result of the prior 2010 decadal survey, New Worlds and New Horizons in Astronomy and Astrophysics. And then it also mentions very early on the fact that one of the main aspects of that 2010 decadal survey was looking at the physics of the universe, understanding scientific principles, and that the Event Horizon Telescope was a main player in that important scientific thrust. And I was also happy to see that the black hole image itself was given complete and center stage at an early part of the report. And this says it all here: new views of the universe can come from observing in new ways. And certainly the EHT was a groundbreaking, innovative way to look at the universe in new ways. It pairs us with the orbiting of stars around Sagittarius A star. That wouldn't have been possible without adaptive optics. And the Event Horizon Telescope achieved unprecedented angular resolution to provide the first direct image of the near horizon environment of a black hole. So they're really putting us and the EHT, and by extension the ngEHT, in the center of things. We also are playing in the vital basic questions that are called out by the report, specifically in the panel on compact objects and energetic phenomena. There are a number of ways in which the EHT and eventually the ngEHT can make major contributions here, especially in this one: what do some compact objects, why? Actually, this should be why. Why do some compact objects eject material at near light speeds? We also got favorable mention and top billing when speaking about our role in society as astronomers. They talk about the solar eclipse was watched by millions of people, and the Event Horizon Telescope was the most downloaded image on any federal government server. Now, not sure if federal government servers are the standard one wants to be judged by, but certainly a superlative, and certainly mentioned at the very beginning of talking about how astronomy can engage with the public. And then looking forward, the report also calls out existing support for the mid-scale research infrastructure of the ngEHT. They call out the fact that the NSF has already funded the design and development of CMBS4 and design of the next generation EHT. So clear indication that the NSF is all in on the next generation EHT, and so is the ASTRO 2020 report. And then it also ties in with some of the fundamental physics that are discussed later in the report. And they mentioned the EHT as being instrumental for what they call BQ3, or how jets are launched. And by imaging the base of the jet in M87, it gives us unprecedented angular resolution that can probe the Schwarzschild radius scales. Now, we also got a top mention in discussion of the general mid-scale program. Now, for those of you who don't know, there are many different tiers of funding in the United States. And a critical one is the Midscale line of funding. The Midscale instrumentation project with MSIP funded now twice with 2 proposals, funded key EHT operations and development. And the MSRI, Midscale Research Infrastructure, is now funding the ngEHT. So we've gotten well over $10 million, actually close to $20 million, actually over $20 million from the NSF for these kinds of projects. Now we get to the meat of it. What is going to happen in the future? And if you go into the radio millimeter and submillimeter panel, they call out the fact that they've identified 4 areas in which outstanding scientific opportunity exists for new mid-scale RMS facilities. Now recall, we are aiming towards a mid-scale research infrastructure proposal of the construction type. It's called MSRI 2, and that would be for $70 to $100 million. So they are steering 4 projects towards that funding queue. Now, it also says, I want to caveat that by saying these areas are referenced with specific white papers, but each is still going to require a path to a successfully competed proposal. So our work is still cut out for us, but the NSF and the 2020 report is giving us kind of a glide path into where we have to be to build out the ngEHT. Now, I apologize for this big bunch of text here, but I'll draw your attention to a couple of different things. But the most important thing is that the ngEHT gets an entire detailed paragraph, as does each of these 4 mid-scale future projects in the radio millimeter and submillimeter panel subsection. So it talks generally in the front here about the opportunities with an ngEHT, levering the EHT results. And this is the critical sentence here. This white paper, Doeleman et al., present a concept for an expansion of the EHT that would entail building 10 new dishes, quadrupling bandwidth, and doing polarimetry. By virtue of its improved imaging performance and higher angular resolution, such a facility would provide essential insights on the question of how jets are formed and powered. That's just one thing, of course. We know from especially this meeting that we do much, much more than that. So there are many more arrows in our quiver to bolster this case. It also says larger samples of tens to hundreds of systems would enable studies of jet physics on scales farther from the Schwarzschild radius, and also by extension throughout cosmic time. And the last sentence here is one that makes my heart skip a beat, and it gladdens me. A logical first step towards a full MSRI 2 scale proposal here would be completion of the design and prototyping work that has recently been funded through an MSRI 1 award to the EHT team. I think this gives very strong endorsement to the path in front of us, that we have to complete and execute on what we're doing now, developing a science case, developing the instrumentation, detailed designs of subsystems and prototyping, and then putting in an MSRI 2 proposal. So everything that we're doing now is completely consistent with what I read in this ASTRO 2020 report. So in summary, I'll say that the EHT is called out in this report in several key and major levels: mid-scale accomplishments with the EHT and mid-scale future. On the outreach and specific science questions, we are front and center. There are some interesting omissions. I'm not going to say it's all sweetness and light. It's not all peaches and cream. when it talks about testing gravity with Sag star, we are not mentioned, even though we know that we can play in that area as well. And in the highlights of the past decade written in the radio and millimeter submillimeter report, we are not mentioned. Potentially an omission, maybe they just thought we were just too big and we would have made all the other accomplishments look bad. One can only speculate. But overall, a positive impact. I did note, oddly, that Sag star was mentioned only once in the entire report. I did a search through the entire report on Sagittarius A star and came up with only one mention, which I found to be kind of curious, because I think of that as being a good laboratory for many different fundamental lines of inquiry in astronomy. So the ngEHT is highlighted as one of those 4 mid-scale projects. Our concept was singled out, although we still have to refine it. And we have a green light for moving forward. There's a lot of synergy with next generation instruments, most notably the ngVLA. It was called out in the report. It said that we play in the same area as ngVLA, and we can certainly work together scientifically. And this provides support for our continuing work and outreach to Eric Murphy and others at the ngVLA on a range of technical and science issues. We really hope to merge with them and benefit from their experience on antennas, for example. And generally, there's clear and significant identification of ngEHT in the report. And I think that's going to sustain our current work and also future proposals that we want to put in. And as importantly, potentially more importantly, it's a strong endorsement for the work that we're doing here in this meeting, organization of the international community. And it also provides very important support for international funding proposals. Now funding proposals from Europe or East Asia or from South America can point to this report and say, this is what we are a part of. This is what we're doing. So that's my take on it. And I'll end there and see if there's any discussion.
Great. Yeah, right on time. So please just raise your hand or put a question in the chat. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Shep, for the summary. So how does this work in the US with the synergy between fundamental physics and astronomy? I mean, in Europe, we also have this problem where if it's not invented by them, it's very hard to sell an astronomy facility as fundamental physics. Is this also happening here, where you see it focusing on jet launching rather than black hole physics?
Yeah, this is very curious how you really hit on an interesting point here. There's not a lot in this report on testing GR, for example. There's not a lot in this report on fundamental physics. I find that curious. Certainly the Department of Energy is the other major player in that sphere in the US. So for example, CMBS4 is being funded partially by Department of Energy and partly by the National Science Foundation. So there are areas in which you can bridge the gap with multiple funding agencies, and fundamental physics is a key one. I think that there are always ways to get funding for these kinds of fundamental physics experiments, and I do count the ngEHT and even EHT as among those. And we'll just have to be a little bit creative. We don't have clear mentions in this report, but we can certainly seek funding from those other agencies, and also write up very compelling science cases for NSF proposals in this country. So it's curious to me. Maybe somebody with more experience would would like to speak to that.
Yeah, we would have to bridge a similar gap in Europe when we go for next level funding.
Yeah. And also, Michael points out in the chat that there is a lot on LIGO and LISA straddling physics and astronomy. That's another area in addition to CMBS4 where you get that link.
Okay, next is TK.
Okay. Hi. Thank you very much for that report, Shep. That was great. And in the context of the question, the immediate question, so the black hole observations, which this one did not actually highlight, shouldn't one be then thinking about the equivalent of Astro 2020, either in fundamental physics or, gravity or whatever, that sort of thing? Or if there are other forums like that where we can highlight the importance of this instrument in those contexts, we should be doing that, shouldn't we?
I think that's a great idea, TK. I really do. And I had not really engaged with those communities before. There is high energy physics. There are other elements. Maybe somebody else can speak to that. I don't have a lot of experience in those areas.
Ramesh, did you want to comment on that, or you have a different question?
Actually, I did want to comment on this issue that we are discussing. The report, even though it came out now, it was already being written almost 2 years ago. And I think the Gralla et al. Paper really threw a big, monkey wrench into the whole business of EHT or ngEHT doing fundamental gravitational physics. So that was a hard sell. So the astrophysical applications is what I think was much more appreciated, and people said it can be done. Whereas, at least at that time, the climate, and I have a feeling even today, the naysayers who say that, there is too much dirty astrophysics, you cannot do fundamental physics, those guys, I think, are still being heard.
Yeah, so I think that's right. And I think it's a major priority for us in the ngEHT to really have a sharp, bulletproof fundamental physics science case that we can stand behind, and not oversell it and have it be kind of mired in controversy that just leaves everyone feeling a little, uncertain about what to believe. But, some tagline that is irreproachable.
Yeah, I certainly agree. Thank you, Ramesh. I hadn't realized the extent to which the Gralla et al. Objections had taken hold at the level of this report.
Shep, let me tell you, just go look at the panel members of the Compact Objects Science Committee.
Okay, will do.
So I think Leonid has the last question, and then we'll need to move on.
Yeah, thank you. Just a note, continuing the question by Help about the sell of ngEHT to fundamental physics. Yesterday at the briefing, the co-chairs mentioned, I think, twice, parallel review process run by APS and AIP. So the question is anybody aware whether there was any input, or rather a question to all of us, was there any input from, let's say, us in very broad sense into those reviews there on fundamental physics? I'm not aware of what's going on there, but that's probably the key entry into their realm.
Yeah, it's a good question, Leonid. I am not aware of any input that was made to those reports. And it could be that we have to rethink our approach. It's not just the NSF, it's not just astronomy, but we have to think more broadly. I certainly endorse that. And it may have been a missed opportunity, but there'll be other opportunities. There's always a midpoint in the decade where you can provide strong input to those. And we'll be looking for that,
right.
So thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, well, so I think we need to move on, but certainly this is the start of a conversation that we're going to be having over the coming months, and it is really heartening to see such a clear path forward for the project. So next up, we'll have Garret review some of the upcoming project timeline and milestones. So go ahead and share your screen whenever you're ready, Garret.
All right, this will just be a minute or two. I just wanted to give folks a preview of what's to come, kind of ahead in the project. I showed a little bit of the timeline on Monday, and as we start thinking ahead and coming out of this meeting, thinking ahead of the major milestones, not just for the project as planned, but also the more formal NSF reviews. We've got a few near-term key science goals. Having a key reference array paper are the focus of the next couple of months, and then distilling science requirements from that. The project review, I mentioned this earlier today, system requirements review in the spring. We've divided some site selection milestones into 3 phases right now. This will be a little bit flexible, but I think in the early part of next year, kind of before or around the mid part of next year, we'd like to start solidifying some of the sites and start moving forward with agreements and a little bit more formal strategy. So having the initial sites selected in the kind of midpoint of 2022, and then looking ahead in yellow or more of a formal NSF review driven from the mid-scale research infrastructure process, both the conceptual design review, preliminary design review, and critical design review in 24. So a lot of time between now and then, but this is a little bit of a preview of what's to come.
Great. Thanks so much, Garret. Any maybe just in the interest of moving on, if people have questions for Garret about timeline, just drop them in the chat. And this is also available. We'll be posting slides and so forth. So one thing that wasn't on that timeline, but that's a really important project milestone, is going to be our next ngEHT collaboration meeting. So Jose is going to tell us a little about that. Jose Gomez. So
thanks a lot, Michael. Let me share my screen. Okay. Yes. So as Michael mentioned, we are thrilled with announcement of the next ngEHT meeting, and this time it's going to be full in person. No more Zoom calls or weird times and the like. And we are thrilled to announce that the meeting is going to be held in Granada, Spain, and it's going to be in June next year. So please mark your calendars. And so for this meeting, we are thinking about the main science drivers that we would like to discuss in this meeting. And we have listed here a number of bullets. First, we would like to finalize the ngEHT science drivers and science requirements. We would like to also discuss the ngEHT science book and assessment of the science use case. We would like to gather as many possible contributions on recent ngEHT relevant science, and if possible from early career people. We would like also to discuss possible targets for ngEHT. This has been, a common theme through the meeting, where it seems that having this list of possible targets will help us to finalize the science requirements and array requirements. We will also continue on discussing and the simulated data challenges and also the new algorithms that we are identifying are going to be key for the science that we are discussing for the ngEHT. As Garret also mentioned, we would like during this meeting in June to reveal the phase 1 ngEHT sites. And this is going to be an important milestone. And we will continue also with the ngEHT technical designs and array configurations. So we are really thrilled on seeing you all again, finally in person after all this, a couple of years with so many travel restrictions and so on. So very much looking forward to meeting you all. Back to you, Michael.
Thank you, Jose. And again, if people have questions, just raise your hand or drop them in the chat. A few things in response there is, one, the dates aren't locked in yet. Please let us know of major conflicts, especially things like regional major astronomy meetings, because we want as many people to be able to participate as possible. We definitely would like to support early career members in particular joining through some travel grants and other types of awards. So again, that's something that's kind of a long lead time thing. So if you would only be able to attend with support, let us know, and we'll see what can be done. And then looking even further into the future, we will be having more in-person meetings. So if you're at an institute that might want to host one, either a full collaboration meeting or a topical meeting, either a science working group or even a subtopic within it, we really want to spin up these in-person meetings and build on all of this energy and all the great ideas that we've been discussing by Zoom for so long. I'm just looking through the chat. I don't see anything else, but please contact Jose if you have questions about specifics, and we're really looking forward to it. So thanks, Jose. Okay, so then with that, Avery and I wanted to close out the meeting with just kind of a recap of what the goals were and where we've come. You want to go ahead and share your screen, Avery, or would you like me to?
I'll get it up in just a second. Okay. Let's get that out of the way. And
how many tabs?
A few. All right. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, well, yeah, first of all, thank you all for making the time to be here this week. We know that it's not easy, and that it used to be that a meeting was something where you drop everything and go and do nothing else, and now everyone is juggling and trying to maintain normal schedules. But we do deeply appreciate all of your efforts and being so engaged through all the discussions that happened. So next slide. We really were pretty ambitious about this meeting. In February, we came together and just wanted to talk about the most exciting science. And here we prioritized connecting it to the instrument. We wanted the engineers and systems engineers and instrumentation specialists to be able to show up and participate at the same level as scientists, talking to each other and really starting to make this instrument a reality. And in particular, if you go to the next slide, the quote that was highlighted on the first day is that, together we will define the primary science goals and begin the process of making key ngEHT design choices. So this is what brought us here, and I think it's been a tremendous success. So if you go to the next slide. So in particular, we had three goals. We wanted to identify what are the most exciting science drivers. We wanted to identify what's necessary to achieve them, and then also to start thinking about trade-offs. What might we forego? What things might we have to sacrifice? Because we can't just build the best possible instrument. There are going to be practical limitations. So if you, go to the next slide. So we kicked off the meeting on Monday. We heard from all the science working groups about really extraordinary progress in taking major strides towards defining these key science goals. I think, especially with the release of the decadal survey, it's clear that we have to do this in a way that's compelling to people all across astronomy and beyond, and we have to have really sharply defined objectives so that we're not pigeonholed into one community. So each of the science leads started by defining these science drivers, and then we had the rest of the week to kind of lean into those and understand, what instrument was needed to build them. So if you go to the next slide. In addition to that, some of the science working groups have already produced fairly mature drafts of these science goals. So in particular, here are just snapshots of one from the algorithms and inference working group and one from black holes and their cosmic context. These are really moving quickly towards a project level document that we're all going to be preparing together, which is the summary of the key science goals for the instrument that will have the high level summary from each of the science working groups. We're targeting having this by the end of the year, and I think especially being able to model the continued efforts after these groups that have put them together so nicely, we have a really good shot at getting this done on time. And then next slide. So the other really painful aspect of this, especially for scientists, I think, is connecting this to concrete instrument requirements. I think it was really remarkable seeing the systems engineering team interact with the scientists and really establishing a common language here, and seeing how we could arrive at metrics that were needed to define the array performance, and also starting to see some of the conflicting priorities among groups. So in fundamental physics, there was a lot of discussion about how dynamic range is really what we're after here. We want to see how black is the shadow and see features like the photon ring. In black holes and their cosmic context, it was clear that sensitivity and resolution are key. In jets, it's clear that we need triggered observations, and polarization was really a focus for some of that. In the transients group, there was intensive discussion on X-ray binaries and the imperative need for snapshot imaging to make that worthwhile. And in New Horizons, they mentioned that fewer sites that are larger apertures would be key. So really sensitivity. So these are each pulling the project in different directions, and these are the tensions that are so important that we identify them now, so that we can really make the best decisions about how to move forward. Next slide. So in terms of these upcoming project milestones that Garret mentioned, the focus now is to close out this the summary of the key science goals with contributions from each of the science working groups. And then over the beginning of next year, we're going to be developing these science use cases that will be reviewed before the Granada meeting. And all of this is going to be kind of culminating in the science book. And I invite you to start thinking about your contributions to that. And I'm certainly hoping that we can have a submission deadline so that some of the chapters in this book can be submitted before the Granada meeting. So I think it's been a huge amount of progress in defining our major science goals in really sharp ways, developing this common language to connect the science and instrument requirements, creating these discussions between the engineering team and the science working groups, and then also getting our first glimpse at these challenges and trade-offs that we're going to have to really come to grips with in the coming months. Yeah, and with that, I'll hand it back to Avery for to close things out.
Well, thank you, Michael. Before we move on to the closing, let me just ask if there are any questions about the near future for ngEHT science for Michael.
And let me emphasize, if you're not engaged in science working groups and want to be, just send me a note and I'll send you the link to the sign up. And you should always feel welcome to contact the coordinators to get involved. Things are going to be ramping up, and this is the moment to really show up and make sure that your ideas are heard.
Okay, it sounds like everybody is exhausted, and
there's one question maybe from Dom, or
oh, I'm sorry, Dom, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess you may have mentioned this and I sort of missed it, but given that there are what seems to my mind, a bunch of perhaps even orthogonal sort of preferences for what the array might look like, what is the procedure going to be for deciding among them? There's going to need to be decisions at some point, right? There'll need to be, things will need to get cut.
Yeah, so one nice thing about the science use cases is that it's people submitting individual science goals and science working groups doing this with homogeneous array specifications for each. And then these are typically then scored by a panel, and you pick the instrument requirements based on the strongest use cases. So even in the science working groups, I think we're getting a sense of, this array is good enough to do our core science. This is the one we really want, but this is the imperative bare minimum. So I think the first step is seeing, can we design an array that meets the minimum requirements for each science working group? And then if there's extra room to grow, then we'll see how to prioritize that. If there's a collision and one science working group desperately needs 10 new dishes that are small and another one needs 4 that are big, then yeah, I think we'll have to have some hard conversations, and we're going to have to rely on the science working groups to come to some sort of compromise.
And I'll just add on that, Dom, it's a good question. It's one of the reasons that we focused this week on getting minimum values and kind of an established set of metrics is really, once we have a range of both minimum and what we could do in a more ideal case across the board for the science cases, now we've got a basis to look at what is the overall development phased approach going to look like. Because we're not going to build the entire array all at once and have all of the sites available all at the same time. It's going to be phased over time anyway, and figuring out the right strategy of what sites to focus on first, what capabilities do we need first. Part of that's going to be driven by what is the minimum level of performance threshold that gets us something in the near term that we can then build off. What are those different step functions in performance? So there's a lot of work ahead in trade studies to define what's most important, to continue what we developed this week. But ultimately, those milestones that we've set up for the project should be considered like decision points and points where we're going to start narrowing in on an architecture and then lower level system designs.
Great, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Garrett, and thank you, Michael. Michael, just one last question. Could you just remind us the time frame for these 3 bullet points? This is 3 months away, 6 months away.
The key science goals document we want to have done by the end of the year so that we can have a science requirements review. The science use cases, we don't have a deadline submitted for those, but we maybe want to synchronize it with the system requirements review. So I don't have a firm date on that. And the science book is something where we want to create an avenue for people to be submitting chapters and them to be reviewed. But that's something that's going to grow over months and years. So there's really no, there's not a clear end date for that. But what we'd like to do is make sure that it's open and we have the first in a sequence of deadlines to start building that out.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so with that, I would like to take us towards closing and just a few observations on the way and a number of people to thank. So first, we opened the meeting with a mention of the fact that more than half the people here are new, young, and upcoming. We just heard Shep talk about becoming senior. I like to say mid-career. You can use that from when you get tenure till you die, apparently. But it is true that more than half of the attendees were next generation members, and that's reflected somewhat in the numbers that we collected throughout the meeting. There were over 1,000 Slack posts, more than 200 people posting on Slack. We had more than 100 tutorial attendees learning about the tools that we've developed for EHT and ngEHT science. Almost 100 people downloaded the ngEHT Explorer. 54 new registrants during the meeting. That means that this meeting now surpassed the February meeting in number of total registrants at 533. We had 12 people playing Scriblio, and they noted almost in entirety that everything in astronomy starts with a blob, apparently. We had at least 5 dogs heard from. 2 of them are from my house. If your dog barked, let me know. I'll update the number. Jose has been a true journeyman in this, and every time we asked him if he would stand up and say a word, he did. So I counted at least 4 presentations by Jose. We had 3 sessions that had to be relocated due to the decadal review. And so many thanks goes out to all the members who spoke in those sessions. There are 2.8 million subscribers to the YouTube channels of our outreach speakers. We had 1 anonymous annotator at the beginning. Thankfully, that was sorted and didn't repeat. And I'm told we have at least 1 parrot who attended the meeting. So we are really branching out in the animal kingdom. We do aim to include every good idea. We also held these Lego exercises. And I would like to thank the facilitators who helped drive those towards a productive place and towards completion. I'm not going to name everybody on these slides, but I'm going to shout out to Garret, to Carrie, to Aaron, to Ryan, and to Mark. Thank you for bringing your engineering expertise and holding our feet to the fire to come up with useful numbers. Of course, that wasn't done alone. We're not getting to animations of black holes just with the facilitators. We also needed to make use of the tremendous insights and prior work that's been going on for the past many months by the science working groups and ably led by the science working group leads. So thank you all. We also had just this morning this, I think, extremely important, elucidating and entertaining outreach discussion. And I would like to thank Peter for chairing that and Professor Smethurst, Professor Dowd, and Dr. Anantwa for participating in that discussion and helping us think about how we can reach a broader audience. And we just over lunch had a whole documentary on a snippet of Chandrasekhar's life. It was fantastic and a wonderful conversation that ensued and had to actually be cut off to begin the parallel session afterwards. So Peter, thank you again for initiating a conversation that nobody wanted to leave. As Shep mentioned earlier in this very session, we made it through another decade. I think many of us can now start marking our lives and how many decadal reviews we've listened to, in which the work of the EHT figured prominently. At least our image was shown repeatedly, and as Shep mentioned, the breakthroughs that ensued were discussed. And I wanted to bring everyone's attention back to the Slack page because it's going to be a durable record of a lot of the discussions and ideas that have come out of this meeting. And I encourage people to continue to refer back to it, to use it. I have on this page just a snapshot of my homework going forward. I might not get it done tonight. But with 1,000 messages, there's quite a bit there to mine. And conversations and connections to be made. I would note that for all the speakers, there is a place to upload your slides if you would like to make them available. And please do be looking for the LOC messages requesting permission to post your slides or your talks publicly. If you don't want them shown publicly, that's fine. But if you don't mind, that would be a wonderful community asset. Also, please hit the like button and the bell and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I did include the 28 in that 2.8 million. It may not have looked like it. I would like to take a moment and just reflect upon the tremendous efforts of all the science working groups. And I mentioned the leadership of those working groups in the Lego block exercise, but of course their contributions extend far beyond that. And we heard about a lot of exciting science on the first day from those working group leaders, but also we heard about a lot of their exciting science throughout the meeting in different facets, both in the plenary and parallel sessions. This is, I think, a chief milestone or a key milestone reached by the project. We are now firing all cylinders. And so thank you to all of the science working group leaders and thank you to Michael for helping to organize that. Of course, the conference doesn't happen without the organization, so I'm just throwing the slide up for the Scientific Organizing Committee once again. A lot of excellent ideas, excellent suggestions for speakers, content, and structure. And I think that it actually worked tremendously well. And I'm very pleased and with the result and honored to be among this crowd. But even more important, tremendous debt of gratitude is owed to our local organizing committee. This is an extremely challenging format to run. and it was done extremely well. I don't think we saw any of the fault lines in the process. There were no dropped sessions, and even our one anonymous annotator was not a Zoom bomb. So let me give a massive shout out and thanks to the local organizing committee. You guys did a wonderful job, and could not have been better. And finally, let me just thank my meeting co-organizers, Garret, Fitzpatrick, Shep Doeleman, and especially Michael Johnson, who's been staying up late, weathering all of the sudden changes that need to be made behind the scenes with me, and helping to coordinate and arrange the meeting as a whole. So again, incredible debt of gratitude to all of you for making this meeting possible. I am hoping that this is the last Zoom meeting that I have to participate in, and it would be a nice way to cap off the Zoom meeting era. But we are about to embark upon the first face-to-face meeting, and I can't say how much it excites me to be able to finally see all of you face-to-face, and I look forward to seeing you all in Granada. So thank you, Jose. That's going to be fantastic. And thank you to all of you for coming and spending this week with us, sharing your insights, your enthusiasm, and getting excited about this project with us. So thank you. And with that, I think we are finished.
Wait, Avery, can I make one more thank you?
Go ahead, Shep.
To you. You're thanking everybody, and you deserve a great round of applause and thanks for helming so much of this. So Avery, thanks to you.
Yeah, this meeting would not have happened without Avery. He was the driving force. Well done.
Well done.
So next year in Granada, I'm wondering, is that the castle where we're all going to be meeting, Jose?
Yes, we will have to move to the 13th century in Alhambra, but I think that will be a lot of fun. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Okay, I'm there. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.